discussing standardized testing, where it has come from, why it exists, and the type of learning environment it has created for young people. We have brought in historians to give us outlets from historical documents, talk to current day students, professors, and children, and even renowned writers such as Alfie Kahn to enlighten our discussion.
And now for a history of standardized testing. Standardized testing all dates back to Alfred Binet, who created the Binet-Simon test of intelligence, also commonly known as the IQ test, in 1915. The IQ test is regarded as a scientific measurement of testing, drawing interest from scientists and psychologists alike. Seen as a wonderful invention, the IQ test fit the ideals of society at this time, one where individuality was highly valued. From here, the test led to the creation of a magnitude of other standardized tests that were highly regarded by society as a scientific way to create reliable and advantageous results. This all exploded even more in 1933 with the creation of a machine to improve the efficiency of scoring tests, what we call today the Scantron.
Who would have thought that standardized testing originated from one IQ test? Hi, I'm Amanda, your host, and today I'm joined with Kalia and Megan, two educational specialists. Let's begin about talking about the purpose of standardized testing.
Well, I think to start, we had this homogenized group of rich males. They're the only ones who were able to go to school. So it kind of makes sense to have a standardized test for the standardized population.
But then the population changed. It wasn't just white, rich males going to school anymore. We had women, we had a diverse group of people going to school with different socioeconomic statuses, and the test began to correlate with the socioeconomic status. Therefore, the white, rich males were still dominating in these tests, whereas the rest of the population with lower socioeconomic status weren't doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what else changed was society as a whole. So we had these tests that were needed. To start with, these tests were the ones that were testing the memory skills, the analytical skills, and that's what you needed to succeed. Now we have a society where you need to be able to adapt, you need to be able to be creative, you need to have practical skills, wisdom, ethical skills, but we still use these standardized tests that only test for those memorization.
So we still use these homogeneous tests to sort and determine the capabilities of this wide, diversely different group of people. Why do we still use them?
That is a good question. Maybe just because we're used to standardized testing, we've been using them for so long that why not stop now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's human nature. We like patterns, we like similarities. The people who are in power right now and administering these tests, how they got to where they were is through these tests. So I think they believe that in order for us to succeed, we need to write the same test they did.
And I guess you can look at it from the consumer perspective too. Some organizations are making money off of these tests.
Exactly. Think of the LSATs, the SATs, the MCATs, the DCATs. They're all bringing in money for people taking these tests.
Another thing with the money is the whole ranking of universities. We all know Queen Magazine, they published that list of the most prestigious universities, and how they determine, a huge part of how they determine these rankings is through these standardized testing. It's become a whole culture. Which university is the best? Which one will my daughter go? Which one will my son go to?
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to talk to a philosopher. Let's take a gander. I'm here today with Cynthia, an educational philosopher, to talk about standardized testing.
Well, as an educational philosopher, I have read a lot of Plato. And through this, I think with standardized testing, there's really a communication error occurring between the students and the teachers. What the students think they know and what the teachers think they know doesn't always match up. So, for example, we can look at Plato's Phaedrus, and he said, one might suppose that they understand what they are saying, but if you ask them what they mean by anything, they simply return the same answer over and over again. So really this means to say that a student cannot explain themselves without truly understanding, and when we're only testing through the standardized testing, multiple choice type tests, there's no true understanding that occurs.
Right, and how do you think this affects the way that students are inspired to learn?
Oh, well, you can look at the Meno written by Plato as well. And the Meno said, do you think that before now he could have tried to find out what he thought he knew, but did not before he descended into the perplexity and realized he did not know what he wanted to know. So in this quote, the Beano is referring to the boy who he was teaching a mathematical problem to. And here the boy was allowed to explore his learning and learn all by himself. With standardized testing, they don't allow that. They only give the importance to the information that is predetermined to be important. And we don't know if that's always true. Thank you.
It's always good to hear first-hand experiences. On to the next topic. So, what do standardized tests measure?
Well, to be exact, Alfie Kahn said to, and I quote, "the retention of low-level skills and soon-to-be-forgotten facts." So essentially, these standardized testings are just testing your memorization skills. They're turning students into passive observers who just have to regurgitate the information that their teachers taught them and spew them on a test. They're not actually learning the material, they just have to memorize it to get a good mark on the test.
Absolutely. We all know the most common form of standardized testing is the multiple choice. It doesn't allow students to generate an answer to explain their thinking. We just have to guess what the professor or the teacher thinks is the best answer.
That was the value on the speed of testing rather than true, thoughtful answers.
And then teachers throw in those questions, all of the above and none of the above, just to screw around with you. That's so frustrating.
What are we even learning? I don't know. Lastly, standardized testing measures who is better than who. Because we have so many norm reference tests these days, it doesn't even measure how well a student is doing on their own, rather just how they compare to everyone else.
Now that we know what standardized tests measure, let's talk about what they limit.
Oh, they limit so much. First of all, students have to focus on what the standardized testing is going to measure, and it takes away so much fun and creative learning. There's so much to memorize in the standardized testing that they don't have time to learn the practical life skills and the other skills that standardized testing just can't measure.
Yeah, and I guess along those lines, the fact that the teachers are telling the students what they need to learn rather than the students having true interest takes away wonderment and curiosity that is necessary for authentic learning to take place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we are joined by Mr. Jonathan Lee, a teacher at a local Burnaby High School, to talk about how standardized testing has affected our views of school and education.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Well, standardized testing has really created reputable schools, and that's something that parents look at. We use FSAs, a form of standardized testing, in elementary schools to rank the schools, which the parents then decide which schools are better than others. However, this misses the whole true aim of schooling, and it takes away the creativity, the exploration, and other ways that students can learn.
Yeah, exactly. It makes those people, those students who score lower on these standardized testings, it essentially makes them a liability because it's bringing down the ranking of that school. And some schools actually, they choose who takes those standardized testing. So they choose the smartest students so they have a higher ranking and they become the most reputable of schools. So for example, ESL students, they might not score as well on these tests, so they are excluded from taking the test, which isn't really fair.
Not at all.
Yeah, more often than not, as a teacher, I feel like teachers are taught to teach students how to memorize instead of actually learn. It's kind of like we're forcing the information into their heads, and instead of getting them to understand it, they just have to know it, and they don't have to know why. They just do it. Usually, students will always ask me, "Will chapter 3 be on the exam?" And if I say no, then they won't even bother to look at it. Whereas, I think because I can only make an exam like so long, right? Like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I have to pick and choose chapters.
Yeah, so essentially teachers are responsible for deciding what information is important and what information is not important. And whatever you deem important, the students need to know.
Yeah, and then it's sometimes like if students study that chapter and I decide to not put on the test, then it's kind of like I feel it's a little unfair, and it's it's really hard to make like a really fair system to evaluate all the students equally.
Yeah, so maybe standardized testing isn't the way to go.
Yeah. Our sources tell us that some states go as far as to reward teachers in pay based on their students' ability to perform well on tests. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I've heard about that. Personally, I don't think it's the way to go because, like I said, teachers don't get to choose the students that are going into the class. And because of that, let's say a teacher just ends up with a class of students that can't perform during tests. And if they're punished because of that, like let's say for like a lower salary, or they have to go through additional like training courses or practices, then I feel like it just
Well, it must really limit what teachers are able to teach. It forces you to teach what is on the test, and doesn't allow you to explore into the creativity or the other, so many other things that schools can teach.
Yeah, I think it's too heavily emphasizes the fact that students have to do well on the test, and it's even going as far as placing the burden on teachers as well, and I don't think it should be the way to go.
So it's making,
It also removes value from extracurricular activities, artistic or musical endeavors that the students might want to pursue.
We're basically training our teachers to be glorified test prep technicians while sabotaging the public education system.
Yes, that's very well said.
yeah, so these standardized tests, they affect the learning environments in a huge way. So these standardized tests actually become a tool for conformity and are used to keep power and control in schools. Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree.
For my own university experience, when my class did well on a midterm, the teacher would actually make a comment towards the fact that, oh, I'm going to have to make the next midterm or final harder. Basically trying to generate a state of failure amongst the students.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair. That's ridiculous. Like, for example, if you have a class that does very poorly on the first midterm, you rarely ever see the professor make the second midterm easier, and he will definitely not make it easier. He'll just keep it at the same difficulty, and it's like, if you're gonna make it harder because the first exam is too easy, then it should work the other way around too.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically we're trapping students in this world where success is continually sought, but it's basically impossible to achieve.
Today I'm with Bob at Simon Fraser University campus. Bob, as a student, what do you think about standardized testing?
Well, just like what Educ says in his work, Virtualization of Progress, it isn't fair that one person's judgment determines what and when a person must learn. And I feel like standardized testing does exactly just that.
Thank you.
How has standardized testing gone as far as to affect students' entire lives?
Standardized testing actually acts as a sorting device, so it determines where people go after school. For example, if you do really well on a test, you can get into a higher prestigious school. For example, you can get into law school, become a lawyer. So standardized testing really can have a huge influence on students' careers and future prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. We can look at it from what was said in the undergrad history of American education, where it was said the wrong it does from a human perspective is the right it does from a system perspective. So I think standardized testing is here for the reason of the system. Early on, we're able to differentiate the students and let them know, okay, do we have a gifted child, do we have a mainstream child, or do we have a child who needs special education? So by dividing them into these categories right away, through the standardized testing results, we know exactly how their lives will lead.
Exactly. This goes against what Jacob proclaimed, which was all men have equal intelligence.
But now kids are treated like cars in a factory that are all constructed in the same fashion and capable of the exact same things. Standardized testing is not equal testing because kids do differ quite a lot, and what is considered equal or fair testing for one student is completely different from the next.
Yeah, I agree. These tests, they definitely strip these kids of their own identity, especially for multiple choice tests. Unlike, let's say, short answer exams, MC is usually right or wrong. There's no in between. They might not know that specific term, but they know they can explain the whole process and whatnot, but they will not get any marks at all. And I know.
So maybe there needs to be a different way to test these individuals of their knowledge. So maybe presentations or whatnot, so that they can explain these processes, but they're not tested.
Yeah, I agree. These standardized testing end up stripping these kids of their identity, such as multiple choice tests. There's only right or wrong. You can only pick one, A, B, C, D. And this doesn't accurately represent the student's knowledge. And I think presentations, could better represent what the student actually knows, as they then elaborate on what they do know, instead of having just be given
Choices.
a note. Yeah.
Right, yeah, of course. We're taking potential away from society by eliminating these large groups of students who can't perform well on tests.
Yeah, exactly. And these students who can't perform well on tests, they then feel degraded, they feel shamed, they feel stressed, and they lack confidence in other aspects of their lives. And they feel excluded and they can't go. Yeah, and this lack of confidence makes people feel as if they don't belong.
Let's now bring it over to an interview I had with a student earlier today. Now I'm joined by Lucy at Burnaby Heights High School, who just finished writing her SATs. Lucy, how do you feel?
I do not feel good at all. That was so stressful. I have so much weighing on this test result. I want to get into Stanford. I've got really high expectations for the things I want to do with my life. And if I don't do well on this test, like, I'm not going to be able to get into that school, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And also, like, these tests are expensive. I can't afford to pay for it or take the test again. So if I don't get a good mark, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Do you think the fact that you were under a lot of pressure in the testing environment may have affected your performance on the test?
Oh, absolutely. I freeze on tests all the time. Like, I knew everything on the test. I studied for so long, but I just blanked. Like, all this, the stress and the pressure that was on me, I left a couple of questions blank because I didn't know them, but I do know the answers. I was just so stressed.
Well, Lucy, we'll be thinking of you. Best of luck.
Thanks.
Now let's take a look at what high school students have to say about this.
Okay, so do you guys like standardized testing?
No.
Yes.
No.
Not really. I think it's fair.
Okay. How about everybody else? Why not?
Everybody's brains work differently, and I don't think it should be tested the same way.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
That's
I agree.
I think it's fair.
Perfect.
City on
I think it's fair.
Today I will express my concerns about the FSA testing. I consider myself a well-educated young lady. However, with FSA tests, my 5 years of school all on honor roll do not matter. This testing looks at me as a number. One test defines me as either a failure or a success through a numbered rubric. One test at the end of the year that the teacher or myself will not even see the grade until after the school year is already over. I do not feel that all this FSA testing is accurate to tell how successful I am. It doesn't take into account of all my knowledge and abilities, just a small percentage. Here are my concerns. First of all, I do not feel good about a form in the FSA that you have to sign ensuring that you can't even discuss the test with your parents. I am not comfortable signing something like this. I have the right to talk to my parents about any and everything related to school and my education. Second, why am I being forced to take a test that hasn't even been testing on students here in Florida, so how can it be accurate and valid on what I know? Why are we taking most of the year stressing and prepping for one test at the end of the year when we should be taking tests throughout the year that really measure our abilities? My opinion is that we should take a test at the beginning of the year, middle, and end of the school year to accurately measure what we know. Third, the stress and pressure that this testing puts on me, and I'm sure most students, is not healthy. Why should we have so much stress about one test when we should be learning and having fun in school? With all this testing in school, more fun things in school, such as recess, are being eliminated because of all the training for the test. So, ladies and gentlemen in the school board, I urge you to put a stop to high-stakes testing today. It is not good for the schools, teachers, and students. Parents and students, contact your governor to put a stop to all the standardized testing. Thank you so much for your time.
To sum it all up, standardized testing exists today because of the historical and societal context in which it was created. It represents an outdated system of assessment that focuses on memorization rather than true, authentic learning.
Standardized testing devalues certain information, creating a hierarchy within our education system while favoring certain individuals.
And in addition to all of that, standardized testing acts as a sorting device, limiting opportunity and success for students, while not even accurately assessing knowledge as it is in real life.
Thank you for joining us this week on Ed Talks. Tune in next week to learn about alternatives to standardized testing.